Hey everybody, it's Mark. On the last episode of the Graphic Novel Apostle podcast, my buddy Gio Leyva and I discussed not only his company, Leyva's Coffee, but also a coffee-based one-shot comic called Crazy Latte Thing Called Love from Pesto Comics. Today, we're going to present the first part of a two-part interview that I did with Adriano Ariganello, who is the writer of that comic, the letterer of that comic, and also the publisher and entrepreneur behind Pesto Comics. When we sat down to record this interview, we were only planning for it to be a one-episode shot, but we ended up speaking for almost 2 hours. It was a great conversation, and so we're going to present part one now, and next week we'll have the second half of that conversation. I hope you guys enjoy it, and before we get to the show, I've got one other thing that I wanted to share with you as well. Back on episode 16, we did a mini-episode where I talked about the book Guns of Brixton, issue number 1, and we had an interview with Sean Golding, who was the author of that book. That comic is about an all-female punk rock band based in London who have taken some kind of drug that prevented them from being infected by a virus that had been spread over London, causing everybody to turn into zombies, and also gave them temporarily enhanced abilities, greater strength, greater speed, greater fighting ability. Well, that was a really fun comic, and I had a good time talking with Sean back then. He reached out to me recently and let me know that issue 3 of that comic is out now and available, and I wanted to let you guys know that too, in case you enjoyed our conversation about that book, or maybe even looked at it after we had our interview with Sean. And so I wanted to let you know that you could get that from Shift if you are based in the UK. I guess they also distribute globally. And you can also get it digitally, either on Comics, COMIX, which is based in Australia, or here stateside, you can get it either on Amazon or at Global Comics. And so I would encourage you to check that out. Well, hey, with that, I hope you enjoy the show.
Once a month, when the moon reaches its highest point in the sky and the wild creatures call out to the night, he emerges from a private sanctuary in an undisclosed location outside of Little Rock, Arkansas. Arrayed in his priestly vestments, carrying forth the good news that comic books and graphic novels aren't just for kids, that they aren't just mass and spandex superheroes, that storytelling in a graphic format can be so much more. He is the Graphic Novel Apostle.
Hello, and welcome back to the Graphic Novel Apostle podcast. I'm your host, Mark Orenberger, and I am so happy to be here with you, as always. And today we've got a treat. In our last episode, my friend Gio Leyva and I talked about a book called Crazy Latte Thing Called Love from Pesto Comics, and we have got the privilege today to welcome onto the show Adriano Ariganello, who is not only the writer of that book and the letterer of that book, also the publisher of Pesto Comics. And so, Adriano, welcome, man.
Yes, thanks. Thanks for having me. I was saying before we got on air, it's been a long time coming. It feels like it at least. So very happy to finally be here. And I love that last episode. It was great. Even though it was, it feels kind of self-congratulating to be like, I love that episode that you guys were talking about me for a big chunk of it. But it was a lot of fun hearing the whole story of Gio and all that and his company. So it was a lot of fun to listen to.
Well, good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. It is always a big thrill to me when I get to hear back from one of the creators of a comic that we've talked about, because I'm not a podcast that just reviews comics to review whatever comic is out. I select them because they're books that I think are great. And for me, it was particularly fun to talk about Crazy Latte Thing Called Love because you and I have gotten to know each other, at least online, gotten to know each other a little bit over the last, well, probably 2 years or so through, and I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge it, through the great community on Discord that a mutual favorite podcast of ours, the Two-Headed Nerd podcast, has put together. And it's been really cool to see over that period of time the development of Pesto Comics, to hear about the things you're doing. Also, I mean, some of the other people who are just fans of the show that get in there and talk about, they're doing a one-off Kickstarter. They're not trying to make a business of it necessarily like you are, but they're creating things. And some of it has been very high quality, and I've loved that.
Yeah, it's been great. And I actually see a lot of people. Every time I launch a new campaign, I see the same names, and a lot of them are even from that Discord. So it's been a lot of fun. And yeah, that Two-Headed Nerd has been a big part of my life in terms of like comics and all that. So it's been surreal the odd time they even give a shout out for a project I have. Joe and Matt will be like, oh, there's crazy latte thing called Love is coming out this month. And I'm just listening as a fan. Or in that case, when they shouted that out, my brother was listening. It's like, did you listen to the podcast this week? So it's been really cool and really surreal because they've been around forever, and I've been listening to them since way back when, before they started getting caught with playing music and that. They used to have their like metal weekends and all that, and then the Apple kind of slapped them down for it. Anyways, I could reminisce about this other podcast for a long time, but as you said, seeing people grow with all the projects they got going on, I gotta say, yeah, this podcast, it's been great seeing it kind of come up from where it was, and you've had a lot of cool guests, a lot of cool episodes. I haven't listened to them all because I haven't read everything that you've read, and I don't want to spoil it, but I know that when I have something I'm going to read, if you have an episode, it's on my list as like a postscript for after I've read something. So I've really been enjoying it.
Well, that makes me really happy. Thanks, man. And to give the listeners just a little bit of, I don't know, a little bit of taste of this, that you and I have talked about doing a series coming up, and I won't say what, but it's one that you mentioned you have not read yet, and it's by a creative team that I sure love. And so I'm hoping we can make that come together. Although I gotta say, I almost feel like it would be an imposition on my part to do that because holy cow, you are a man who is grinding away at all times. I am so impressed, Adriano, with the pace you keep.
I appreciate that. It's sometimes I really feel it. I really feel like, oh man, I am taking on a little bit too much. And if anyone does know me and follow me, I'm not shy about reshuffling and re-strategizing. I've had a couple. I set my targets really high, and I don't always hit them. But you what is it? You shoot for the stars, you may hit the moon. I may have got that backwards, but I think that's the idea.
Well, that's fantastic. I'll tell you, there was a while back when I had, I was probably 6 months in or so to listening to your weekly podcast. And, to give just listeners the background, you have a Substack post that comes out every week on Wednesday that is free for readers and also an accompanying audio version. And that's how I consume it. I'll occasionally jump over to the Substack to, comment if there's something I want to mention. But, I like to listen to it in the audio format and on that, you are talking about things that you are, doing, things that you have upcoming. And there was a point in time where I thought, okay, I guess Adriano is doing this full time. Like there's the number of things he's doing, I can't imagine he is also working a full-time job. And then I started hearing you mention, well, the day job, my day gig, whatever. And I thought, when does this man sleep? So, I mean, tell me about let me ask you this. It seems that you are really trying to commit not just to making some comics, but to make a viable business out of Pesto Comics. And you are putting in the backbreaking labor that apparently a person has to do to make that dream come true. Would you talk a little bit about that, what the ultimate goal is, and where you see yourself at closer to the starting point than the finish line, probably?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, to your point, I have the benefit of having a job where I primarily work from home. So my day job is in IT. I used to do the whole commute to the office and all that. So when that ended, I gained a couple hours, right, on either end of my day, and I just put that to use. Sometimes I do stress myself out with how many things I've got going on, and I don't get as much sleep as I should for sure, especially when I have live campaigns going. But yeah, the goal is just, this is something I've been trying to do for a couple decades now. It had a lot of false starts, had a lot of things that I thought were going to go a certain way that didn't go a certain way. And I just got kind of tired of, asking for permission to, entering contests and doing, because that's really what I was doing before. I was writing short stories and things like that with the hopes of, okay, if I win this contest, maybe someone will notice me and they'll let me write a comic. And then I realized, like, that's, why am I doing that? I'm doing something I don't necessarily want to do to get to this end goal. So, I've been following a lot of the indie authors on that side with like Amazon and all that, and seeing how possible that is. And although I'm dabbling in that as well, even then I'm like, well, okay, maybe I'll build my indie author career, and then when people accept me, I'll start making comics. At some point, I just had kind of like that light bulb go off to be like, just do the comics, just figure it out. Do the comics. So I've been listening to Tyler James, another excellent podcast, with the Comics Launch podcast. He also has the program that he puts together where you can learn how to do all this. There's a whole bunch of other people that are very helpful, Travis Gibb and Matt Garvey and all these guys that have a lot of information about crowdfunding and all that stuff. And yeah, so I finally decided, you know what, I'm going to put it all together, squirreled away a bit of money to hire an artist. Started with a 4-pager called Brad's that I give to everyone who follows the Substack, if you listen to the Substack or read it. So it's a small 4-pager that I reached out to Lane Lloyd because he was on Twitter saying, hey, you know, I have some time if anybody wants to do a short project. So I threw 4 pages at him. It went well. I was happy with it, and then kind of went from there and started rolling one project at a time. Yeah, and very slowly built. I tried to do it the way you're supposed to, I guess, for lack of a better term, trying to learn as much as I could with each one. And now I'm on number 10. It's going very well. Very happy with it. But it's still, like you said, I'm much closer to the beginning than I am to the ending. So with this whole Pesto Comics endeavor, the goal is just right now to be able to continue to put out work that at least pays for itself. That's the dream, right? If I could get to a point that I can have an idea, I can hire an artist, and the thing gets made and read and paid for, I'm happy, right? That's really the goal at this point. Whatever comes of it beyond that, I'm not as worried about. It's more just getting all the ideas that you know I've had waiting and I keep coming up with is the problem. Especially as I work with these new artists. Every time I do a campaign, I do multiple variant covers, so I meet a new artist or two every time, and then I end up thinking of something great that would go with them. So and now it's just right now I have five artists working on something for me,
Ooh.
sending me pages. So I've got work through 2027 right now.
Wow.
But yeah,
That's phenomenal. Because when you decided to do it, you were serious about that. I mean, you made a big financial investment, and I love that you have been so open with your listeners and your readers about the economics of putting out these independent comics, about the frustrations, about the thrills as they come along. And let me recommend as highly as I can the Pesto comics. You know, to me, I always think of it as the podcast, but also your Substack for anybody who is interested in how the comic gets made at the independent creator level, because you are amazingly transparent. And for me, it's been really eye opening, you know, to see about like, all right, you're investing money up front, that you are paying out of pocket to have an artist create all of this work, to have the coloring done. You do the lettering yourself, and you're quite good at it, and that is
oh,
a
thank you.
separate skill. You know that it's not putting whatever the template is in Word or whatever for bubbles on the screen. Otherwise, you're going to make your book look very amateurish. And you know you've gone well beyond that, and then fund it through Kickstarter and come back at the end and go, I did all this work, I mailed all these comics all over the world, and yet I'm still in the red on the production of this comic. And so now I'm going to go to, you know, sell it additionally with the next bundle, with, you know, with the next Kickstarter campaign, or I'm going to go to a zillion comic conventions and set up a table and try and sell them. Where's your thinking on all of that? I mean, it has to take some bravery to just acknowledge like this is what it looks like to create one of these, and it is a long game and not a short game.
Yeah, absolutely. You nailed it. It's the long game, right? So there's a couple things I want to touch on. The first is the long game point of it, which is something that I won't say frustrates me, but something that I wish I could really make as clear as possible to people getting started. That you will not make a comic and then you know Warner Brothers knocks on your door the next morning saying, "Here's $4 million, good job." Like no one will notice. Like you will make a comic. Like my first one, Unlimited Udo. I love that book. It's one of my favorites and a lot of people's favorites. It's weird how each book, I don't know, everybody seems to have their favorite book of what I've done so far, which is great. But as much as that is one of my favorite books, I sold I think 70 copies and half of those were digital. That was my first like proper Kickstarter. And yeah, that's not doing anything for you, right? Like I lost my shirt on that one, but it was fine. To me, it was an investment in the future. It was, okay, I got one book out there. Now I can use this to prove that I'm serious. I can get a book together. I can get it printed and shipped, and people will have a physical thing in their hands. And I'll use that to work with a different artist, which was what I've done. And then I wouldn't say it gets easier, at least not if you're trying to progress, right? It stays the same level of difficult, but it's different challenges along the way, right? I'm funding more than I've ever funded before on Kickstarter, but a lot of that is because I have this back catalog that I've put all this effort into, right? And it's because of that that I'm now feeling a little more comfortable than I was before, financially speaking, right? Where I can launch a campaign and I know I'm going to get most, if not all, of my money back, but I'm on number 10 and I'm still not even 100% sure that I will. This campaign's it's the best one I've had thus far. The one that's
The
live
campaign
right
you've
now,
just launched.
the one I just launched. So it's the best by far, just in terms of pace. So it's going to break the record for at least how much I'll get in a haul. So this one will cover itself and probably a little bit of the previous one. However, if we're talking about From Parts Unknown, which is my first series that I put together, like that was a net loss. Like right. And part of that was learning strategies of release and all that. Like and again, transparent, I made a mistake of being a little too quick to release them. So I released 2 and then I released 3, and people didn't have issue 2 in their hands. So of course people sat out number 3, which made that a huge loss. A lot of them came back for number 4, which was helpful. So a lot of learning things, but it's having that goal of, it's not going to pay off today. It may not even pay off in 5 years, right? It's going to take a very long time for you to get to a point where you can comfortably release something and say, this will fund itself. I'm gonna start working on the next thing. You just have to be willing, to take some risk, to have some money aside. That's the reality of it, right? Like, you have to have money for ads. People don't like to hear that. They want to just put it on Kickstarter and hope Kickstarter pushes them. They have something like 300 live projects every month, at least, like concurrent live projects. So you have to cut through the noise somehow, and putting a little money and a little skin in the game is what it costs. So it's a risk, but it's a risk you're taking on yourself. So if you believe in yourself and your work, it's a risk well worth taking, but you have to understand that, that's part of it. There's a risk and there's a financial aspect to it. And you may see these big numbers with people's campaigns where they're making 5 figures. They could still be losing money, right? Just based on however the production went. Shipping has been a nightmare now. I'm in Canada. Shipping to the US is now a huge challenge, right? It's more expensive than it's ever been. It used to be cheaper to ship to the US than it was within Canada. That's no longer true. So there's a lot of challenges and things you got to face, but you just got to understand that this is just one step in a very, very long game you got to play to ever get to where you want to get to.
Sure. Now, you mentioned a little bit about how some of your earlier books continue in the process of paying back themselves or funding the next thing as you move along. Can you talk about some of the different ways that you've found that has been successful for sort of giving a longer life to some of the earliest books?
Yeah. So the big thing is, don't forget about your back catalog. It's something I learned after like the third one was Crazy Latte. When I launched that, I kind of I put all my focus into pushing that book. And I think it was Tyler James, of all people, that told me, don't forget about your back catalog. That's where you're going to make a lot of money. Push those like they're also just coming out. So with every campaign, I always make a point of saying, like, here's the books that are also available. Like, I make a special space for, here's the entire catalog and what you can expect. But also, while I'm doing the campaigns, I'm always pushing, like, if you are new to Pesto Comics, that is okay. You're welcome to join. Here are some deals to get you caught up, right? So I always have big digital bundles, right, that you can get every book that we've put together. I have starter packs, so you can get the main cover of every book, although sometimes I change those up for fun. So I'll throw in a variant instead of the main cover with that pack. And then I have the everything pack, and there's always 2 or 3 takers per campaign with that, where it's just like, I'm going to send you the heaviest box, which now includes, I think it's 31 comics because of all the variant
Wow.
covers and things. And I just make it as easy as possible for you to get caught up, so that you never feel like, the worst thing in comics is, I'm picking this up at issue 731 and I can't read 730 comics to catch up. So I feel like I can never get in. I don't want anyone to feel like that. Not that I have that many to catch up with, but just the
Yeah.
idea of, like, Yeah, maybe one day. Right? But I want people to feel like it's very easy to hop in. I don't want them to feel as though, oh, I don't know about this or that. They just kind of do it. They just jump in and enjoy it, right? So really never forgetting that you have a backlist and you've put time and care into these stories. And every time you launch something new, remember to continue pushing the old stuff because you've already put in the work too. So it's almost like free money at that point.
Well, it's gotta help too that a lot of your earliest offerings were one-shot comics. And I'll tell you, I was not familiar with your work or what you were putting out during Unlimited Udo or Stay Cool, your first 2 comics, unless I've got that wrong. I believe those were
No,
your
you got
first
it.
2.
Yeah.
Okay. And so it was when you launched Crazy Latte thing called Love and were funding that, that I said, "Oh, cool." And so I did one of those, catch-up bundles, and I got the physical copies for those as well, which was kinda neat because you print on a pretty high quality paper,
Thank you.
for
Yes.
for the comics. Yeah, well, it's noticeable. And those 2 were fun books, but it was Crazy Latte that brought me in, but I'm glad to know, even though I didn't need to have read them for purposes of enjoying Crazy Latte or for then moving forward with you into From Parts Unknown, your wrestling vampire series that I have enjoyed tremendously up to
Thank
this
you.
point, and looking forward to the conclusion when it arrives, I think, pretty soon. But, it was just fun to go, "Okay, these were the stories that Adriano did before." And, to kinda say, "Alright, now I've got a sense of the vast majority of this creator's work." Would you walk us through the history of Pesto Comics in terms of publication? Because you also are not just doing comics. You've got, an anthology of short stories, which is volume one was great. I've still got it on my nightstand. I've read two-thirds of it so far. And the
Nice.
nice thing about it being a volume of short stories is, I can put it down and pick it up at my leisure and not have to worry about remembering everything that came before. But you're also talking about some novellas that you're writing. And so you're looking to branch out. I'd love for you to kind of talk us through, how these publications have come in sequence a little bit. Also, what your thinking is on going multi-format, because I would think that there's some real risk in that too. If you turn your attention away from comics and, have readers that say, I'm not really into prose these days. I just want to read comics. And so I'm going to sit out the novellas or whatever. Would you mind to go into that a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me start with the last bit before we get into the chronology of everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the reason I kind of jump from format to format now, the anthology Big Smoke Pulp was kind of a proof of concept to see, okay, I've been on Kickstarter as the comics guy. Even when I go to I do go to these author conferences here in Toronto, and I'm still the comics guy. Like I'm kind of at a place there. So the key thing there, though, is I wanted to see, will some of these readers, knowing that my style, my tastes, my whatever, will they translate over from comics to prose? A lot of them have. A lot of them dropped off. I would say about a third of the people that read comics ended up there. But what it also afforded me was a whole new audience that I wasn't reaching with comics. People that just aren't into it. They want something a little deeper, a little more structured. And in terms of the risks, so now that I have these kind of two disparate audiences that I joined together using the Substack and the podcast, which has been very interesting because I see where people are coming in from, and it's not quite an even split, but it's almost like 2/3 comics people and a third of them are just there for the talking about Big Smoke Pulp and the prose and the novels and all that stuff. So it's been very interesting seeing how they're willing to almost tolerate each other, these groups. So it's been
Nice.
very, right. It's been good in that way. But in terms of why I'm doing that, a big thing with comics, and I love this part of it, is it's very collaborative. It's something that I come up with a story and I give it to someone else and I don't know what's coming out on the other end, right? I give it to the artist, and although I gave them direction and I asked them to do this and that, I don't exactly know what I'm getting back. And I'm almost always, well, not almost, I'm always impressed with what I get in return. Very rare have I even left a note to say, and if it is, it's usually a technical thing, like, oh, I think they should be looking at this other person. They were talking to them, or something like stupid and technical. But artistically speaking, always impressed with what I get back. That said, I don't get that level of control to tell exactly my story. It's our story. It's a collaborative thing. So that's why I've been looking more to the novellas and the novels, and that it's these stories that I feel like they need one, they don't fit in the format of a comic, just in terms of the depth of what I want to get into and all that stuff. Like, comics are very brief and truncated, and I love them for that. But sometimes when you want to tell a little longer of a story, it just doesn't work for a comic. So there's those stories, but also with a book, it's my voice entirely. Aside from the editor kind of helping me stay inside the lines, right? It's me. It's 100% unadulterated, my voice, which is a different thing. But if you like my newsletter, that's also just me. So, uh,
Well,
right,
I
that's
do.
kind of the idea. Yes, and I appreciate that. I appreciate
Hmm.
that. And real quick, you are not alone in terms of primarily listening to it. I found that when I started doing the podcast, that's when people really started to jump onto the newsletter. That's what exploded my I guess listenership.
If I can interject there, it is kind of a lot for me to sit down and read a bazillion newsletters, and I do subscribe to a lot of comic creator newsletters, and there are some that I find I just delete when I get, even though I'm interested in that person's career, because it's just a little too much. But yet, when I am folding laundry, doing the dishes, driving to work, as long as I've already dropped off my son and he doesn't have to listen to the podcast too, because he has no tolerance, I can catch up on a lot of things like that. And so having that audio version, and frankly, you read it too. And so hearing your voice that I am familiar with, reading that newsletter, I go, okay, yeah, it's Adriano. It's my online friend, that I like to check in with every week.
That I'm very happy to hear that. That's kind of the thing I was going for, right? I feel like it's just a touch more personal when you can hear my, like, as I thought, oh, I could throw this into an AI and let that read it, because even now I think with Substack it's built in. You can have the AI read it. I'm like, no, but it's, I want my inclination and my you know my tone and what I meant to say to come through, as I when I read the newsletter, and then for those that only read, I also just continue on after and talk about whatever's on my mind at the end of each recording. So that the super secret epilogue, I call it. But it's just me talking about whatever's on my mind that day. It's usually me reflecting on what we just read. But there, if you really want to get to know me, that's where I usually end up, spilling some secrets and talking about exactly how I'm feeling about things. So I try to, again, I try to treat people and give people a little extra here and there. So yeah, I think the podcast has probably been one of the best things I've stumbled upon. I'm definitely going to be experimenting with video and that in the near future. We'll see how that goes. But the audio will definitely be there, because that's, yeah, I'm very happy with how it's gone, and it seems like that seems to be the most popular aspect of what I do on the newsletter. All that said, okay, so let's talk chronology.
Sure.
I'm like, we were going to say something, so now I remember
Yeah, I started
chronology.
to redirect you away from my own question, and so I appreciate you rolling with me.
No worries, no worries. No, I can talk forever about anything and go on a weird tangent. So I appreciate you keeping me somewhat on the rails. Okay, so chronology. So I mentioned when I got started, I reached out to Lane Lloyd, excellent artist. Got that 4-page. It's a clone, so there's a theme with my first couple things. It's
That's
a
right.
dinner date with clones, right? And one of the clones shows up. It's not so much clones, but they like switch place, right? So only one gets to be out in the world. So as Brad's on this dinner date, another one shows up saying, "You're overstaying, you're welcome," right? And it's kind of how that all plays out. With that confidence of, I made a comic and people have read it and most people thought it was neat, I reached out to Valentin de la Casas. So Brazilian, no, Argentine artist. Oh my God. How dare I?
If
Argentine
if you
artist.
want to do it again, I'll cut it out.
No, that's good. Leave it in.
Okay.
But yeah, so I reached out to Valentin and we did Unlimited Udo again about clones, but this time was the way that Udo was drawn. Udo Dolos is the character. It's more of a Steve Jobs type, although now when I pitch it, it's Elon.
Oh,
Imagine
when I read
Elon.
it, I thought Elon Musk for sure.
Exactly, right? It was just a contempt, like there was the time I wrote it and then times changed and it's like, well, you can replace one with the next and they kind of
Yeah.
it still works. the the idea of a limited Udo is, imagine if Elon Musk decided the only solution to the world's problems is that he cloned himself to solve them, right? So the problem is this Udo Dolos, this Elon type, makes so many clones of himself because he sees all the problems of the world that the world becomes overrun. So by the time that we join the comic, the world has been so overrun that now there's these people that are exterminators for all of these excess clones. And we follow the main character, Hope, and she's a former employee of Udo who then has to go through this extermination process with all of these clones. And then hilarity ensues. Something happens that I won't spoil, but it kind of all comes to a head by the end of the comic. It's a one shot. And yeah, the whole purpose of the one shot was people don't know who I am. I can't tell them to join me for 10 issues of something. As an indie, that would probably take me 4 years to get out. I wanted to have something that people can get a beginning, middle, and end, get a sense of who I am and the type of stories I'm going to put out, and can enjoy it in one sitting even, right? And maybe if they enjoy that, they'll come back for the next. And so far, so good. It seems like that's been working. So
Cool. So after Unlimited Udo,
yes, is Stay Cool. So Stay Cool is an experiment. So when we're talking about the production of comics, I wanted to try to, as much as I enjoyed doing Unlimited Udo, full color, 28 pages, I wanted to see if I could cut the expenses a little bit. So I found Rafael Cristiani, a Brazilian artist. I still work with him on many projects today. And so this was our first one together. This was the first one that I really went more the type of stuff that I read. So Stay Cool is a thriller, noir, sci-fi thing. So it's basically people just start exploding. People start exploding at random. We join in kind of like a unnamed police precinct type area where people there start exploding. Our main character, Ellie, is caught in the middle of it as one of her best friends is one of these victims. So now she's angry and she wants revenge and she wants to get to the bottom of it. And in doing so, she gets caught in the web of all the people behind all of this happening.
which goes back to the Dolos Corporation as well.
Yes, exactly. So not everyone notices that, but
We have a little continuity between the two one shots.
yeah, exactly. Right. I always try to have some hint of some other comic in each one. So some are a little more specific than others. But yes, so there's a thread there that, you know, these nefarious things that are happening in the first one are also happening in the second. Even though the tone is widely different, the
Very.
the theme of the, you know, the evil corporation kind of overtaking your life, I think carries through. Right?
Sure, sure. Hey, I want to ask about that book because I will tell you, I liked both books, but I preferred Stay Cool over Unlimited Udo. You know, you said more people seem to point to Unlimited Udo. Have you considered going back and doing a color version of Stay Cool?
I haven't thought of doing a color. I don't know why. I probably could. I probably could and make it look really good.
You know, some comics are so compelling in black and white, and I tend to think they are the ones that are a little more simple in their drawing and design. I think of things like Chris Somney's work in black and white,
Hmm.
where you know he tends to put less in the background, and his action is more intentional. I guess I don't know exactly how to put my finger on it exactly, but his works so well in black and white because it's so crisp and clear. And when you've got a comic that looks great as it is in black and white and Stay Cool, but people are catching fire and you know running around and furniture is collapsing all around you, I have to feel like that would really be enhanced by a color version. And you know, you talk about relying on your back catalog. I would buy that comic again if it came out in color.
You know, that's a great idea.
Hey man, I'm trying to get JP Jordan a little bit of work too because he's done great color on your projects so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's with he's done a lot of work with Raphael's inks in particular, so he knows how to manage that. Yeah, no, where I thought you were going with it, which is a question I answer every once in a while, is when is the sequel coming? And my point is always, I have ideas for sequels for all of these books. However, I wrote them as one shots. I'm hoping to keep them as one shots.
Oh,
Right?
fair enough. That's a little disappointing to me to hear because it did feel like where Stay Cool ended, it was sort of begging an issue two. I mean,
Ah,
it's a complete story, but I was like, okay, give me the next one.
you're not alone. This is the thing. Like you're definitely not alone in saying that. And I think my resistance is I'm just like it's almost like I'm afraid to go back to it. Like I had such a clear idea for the one shot that I feel like I don't want to do a TMNT 2 Secret of the Ooze situation where there was never supposed to be a second one, but people kept asking for it. So here you go. And it's awful. Right.
Oh, I like Secret of the Ooze.
I mean, it is what it is. I wore out that VHS as much as anybody else, right? Like I watched it a ton. However, side
Well,
by
that's
side,
fair.
very
That's
different
fair.
films.
I was the right age at the right time, so I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't find it to be such a good movie if I went
Yeah,
back.
exactly. Like one is a very clear, like this is a film with turtles in it, and the second one is let's sell some toys, which is
Mhm.
fine because if you're 10, 11, you want those toys, it's working. But nonetheless,
Yep.
not that I'm looking to sell toys or anything like that, but yeah, I think it's just that fear. I wouldn't want to disappoint myself and the readers, of course, but in not being able to have something clear and like to do it just to do it. So I have ideas I've been noodling with. I haven't actually written anything. I'm closer with Unlimited Udo. I have an actual idea. I just haven't seen it through yet. Stay cool. There's a very there in my head. I have a clear idea where that goes, but I just don't have a full story. But one day, maybe. And maybe
Okay.
like you said, the way to do that is to color the first one and then have the second one come out full color
Ooh,
right off the bat. I don't know.
package that together.
Right? That's the approach. Get people caught up. You got me thinking. I'll have something for
Adriano, this is for free. I'm
I appreciate
not
it.
looking for royalties on this book.
Hey, I'll send you a copy if it happens. No need to back it.
You got a deal, but I will back it.
Appreciate it. But yeah, it's something I need to consider it. The sequel question comes up all the time, and I always say like, officially no, but never say never, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, your third comic was one that I don't need or want a sequel to. I loved it exactly the way it was, and that is the comic that Gio Leva and I discussed last 2 weeks ago, I guess now, on the podcast Crazy Latte Thing Called Love, which I understand, Adriano, marked kind of a turning point for your company.
Yes, yes. So this was the first one that really kind of took off in a way. So Crazy Latte Thing Called Love. I worked with Mattia Monaco. So I'm looking forward to working again with Mattia. We have something that we're working on that's a little bit of a secret right now. And I was very lucky to get in his schedule because he actually has a book right now with Mad Cave. It's called Eat Your Young. It's excellent. If you haven't read it yet, definitely check it out. Issue 1 came out very recently. I think issue 2's due like next week or something like that.
That
But
sounds right to me. I've read issue 1, and it was good.
it's amazing, right? And it
Yeah.
doesn't so much like Latte, it doesn't do the same thing without Mattia's art, I feel like he has a very big hand in how the story is told. And that was true with Latte, right? Not that it's not true with all the other artists I work with, but he's probably the one most of all that really wanted to drive the story. With Raphael, I've worked with a few other artists now. Raphael's on top of mine, but Valentin and anyways, all of them.
Mhm.
They're a little more direct and tell me what you want to see, and then they might offer some changes, or usually it's the layout and the art direction that they really drive things. They say, I want it to look this way. Mattia's like, I think it makes more sense if we do this, or it makes more sense if we have this kind of scene here. So he drove it a lot more. With Latte, it was not so much of the plot being driven, but really just how things were sequenced. There's a lot of those dream sequences that you have in this book, and he really ran with those. I said in it, he comes in and they have a fight. Go, all right. I did the
Mhm.
kind of the Marvel style. I didn't give him exactly what to do, and he really ran with it and did some really cool things. So for those who didn't listen to the podcast and have the rundown of what the story is, it's effectively, oh my god, Liam. I can't remember all my main characters' names. Liam. Liam goes for his coffee machine breaks in the morning. He goes for his morning coffee at the local coffee shop that he's never been to before, and there he meets Ruby, the girl of his dreams. However, she doesn't know that he exists. So that's the main conceit of the story. However, Ruby isn't who you think she is. She's in a lot of trouble herself, and in Liam trying to get closer to her, he gets himself in a whole ton of trouble. However, Liam isn't necessarily the best guy in the sense of his reason for falling for her and his obsession, for lack of a better term, and his expectations of what this will be. So, this was kind of my approach of all of the CW shows and WB and UPN shows of the back then when we were young, the Dawson's Creeks of the world, where it was just all very romantic and lovey-dovey and that, and it's all great. Like I like that stuff, don't get me wrong, but there was kind of it was always from the male point of view, of like she's the dream girl and then she just always fit that role, right? So it's
Yeah.
like, what if she didn't? What if, yes, I'm the man and I expect this to go this way and I expect her to love me in all these beautiful ways, but she's got her own life. Like she's her own person and it may not be the thing that you dream of, right? She's not there to fit as a puzzle piece in your life. You're supposed to go together, and he doesn't understand that, right?
And
So
poor Liam never does understand that.
and that's the fun of it, is that it never, even to the final page, the
Yes.
change isn't the change that you would expect. So he does grow and change, but not in the right way. So you
Yeah.
still get that character development, but not in the happily ever after kind of way. So I was always very careful to say, when I said it was a romance, that it's not a romance, because I know that's a big thing. It's happily ever after makes it a romance. It's not.
Hmm.
It's a romantic thriller at best.
Well, and I'll tell you, I kind of got to this a little bit in our episode, and for folks who are listening, if you haven't listened, shame on you. Go back and hear the really cool story of my buddy Gio Leva and his coffee company, and also the great story of Crazy Latte Thing Called Love. But I made a comment toward this that I think if you had a different art style that you had used for this book, it would feel really different because we look at it as kind of sweet, innocent love that he's fallen for, but honestly, he's kind of a creep. And yet, that cartoony art style sort of takes you back to the innocent part of I think what you were trying to convey with Liam.
Yeah, exactly, right? It's that's the depth that Mattia adds, because in a different artist hands, they may have just taken everything I said literally, right? And then now Liam is just a creep. And he is a creep. Don't get me wrong. That's the point. That was the goal behind it, that he's a little bit of a creep, but it's still through his point of view. So he never sees himself as such. So again, with a different artist who's a little more literal, a little more realistic even, I feel like you may lose that depth. You may lose that sense that no, he's the hero of his story, even though he's still doing things that are not very heroic of him, right? He's doing very
Yeah,
selfish things, but it's the veneer of it kind of helps push that point along, right?
yeah,
Next was the first series. So I was very careful to do multiple one shots because I wanted people to get to know my voice and the type of work I'm doing, and to see that I'm not beholden to one genre or another. So each book was very different, very deliberately, which is technically bad advice, technically not something you're supposed to do. You're supposed to stick to a genre and really make your name in it. I did the exact opposite and did three very different stories, but they're all one shots. So now I wanted something that would build on itself over time, a series. It's a series that I had been thinking about. It's everybody has that, like, oh, this is the thing that I've been working on for 10 years, 20 years. This is my version of that. It's not exactly as it was. It transformed as I turned it into a comic, but I used to go on these long drives with my brother from Toronto to Detroit to watch the Red Wings, and I would talk his ear off about this comic that I'm going to make one day. It's about pro wrestling vampires, but the story I told him was about pro wrestling zombies because Walking Dead was popular at the time and,
okay,
and all that. It transformed into something entirely different. But the core of the story is about two brothers, and
hmm
they're a tag team and all that, but it's their love for each other and trying to make it in this world that gets significantly more perilous as it goes on. The problem with number one was, I very freely said just now that it's about pro wrestling vampires. I did not want to spoil that with issue one. So I was very careful to just say, I have a wrestling horror comic. And then saying that it's a horror comic, and if you get a chance to look at it, if you haven't seen it before, the art by it's Daniel Caval, and the colorist is JP Jordan, who I work with quite frequently now. JP did something very interesting with the color choices in a way that made the book so unique in its own way. It really sells the book. However, when you don't know what the book's about other than wrestling, and you see the color palette and all that, it becomes a very difficult sell to kind of get across that, like, no, like, this is going somewhere. It's going to get really gory. It's going to get really crazy, but ignore the very bright palette. Right?
kind of the 1980s sort of pro wrestling feel.
Yeah, exactly, right? So I absolutely love what he did with it, and it's one of the so I have a few. I always try to keep notes of when people walk by my table at a convention, what's the thing that makes them double back? This is one
hmm
of them, right? I have a couple
Oh, really?
covers that do it. Yeah, I have a couple covers. I have certain books that are a little more titillating. I have things that that will make people double back. This is the one actually. I keep all my books open on my table so people can flip through them. And this one is the one that, as people walk by the interior pages, along with Latte, Crazy Latte also does it. But this one,
Mhm.
a lot of times, will stop people from afar because very bright colors, very interesting aspect to it. And as you flip through it, it kind of spoils the story for itself. Again, I'm not hiding it anymore that it's a vampire book. So they see these bright colors and these silly color costumed characters, and as they flip through, they see that they're killing each other. They're ripping each other apart, and it becomes, like, oh my god, what is this, right? So the book sells itself, for lack of a better term. And
Yeah.
it's thanks to that. It's thanks to this weird combination that we put together of Daniel's kind of cartoony art with
Mhm.
JP's style that complements it in such a wonderful way that it just, yeah, it became much like I was saying earlier on about, writing novels versus writing comics. This was an idea in my head that was so different, as I told my brother what I was going to eventually do and what it had become. It's night and day, a different thing, and I'm so happy with how it turned out. But yeah, so that first one did pretty well, but I was definitely shackled a bit from not being able to say exactly what it was.
Fair.
Right, so that was a challenge, but it did well. It funded. It did everything it was supposed to do. I believe that was also a project we love on Kickstarter, which I've done most of the time. I think I'm missing 2 or 3 out of all the campaigns I've done. So very happy with how that went. It seemed like a good kickoff to the series, and I left number 2 for the following year as I worked on something entirely different in the meantime, which was Big Smoke Pulp, which is the anthology of a bunch of short stories, not just from my own stories. I have a handful in there, most of which I just added as stretch goals, short stories that I had sitting around that I'm like, I'm not going to submit these. Let's add them to the back pages, right? So I had those kind of stories I added, but most of it is work from other authors. I had an open call, with a word rate, the whole thing. People sent me just over 200 stories to read through, and I narrowed that
Wow.
down to 40. Yeah,
Yeah. That's a lot of submissions.
it is, and I could say it's sometimes stressful because I'm doing it again right now for volume 2. And I think we just crossed 170, and before I cut it off, because I don't know what's going on with this one, but a lot of wonderful stories have come through, and I'm having a hard time cutting cutting them down. So I made the deadline a lot sooner than I did the first time around, because there's just too many good stories, and I don't want to make it 2,000 pages. Nonetheless,
Sure, sure.
that first one did really, really well in terms of backers and all that. Like, it kind of kept pace with everything else I was doing. Financially speaking, it outpaced Crazy Latte, which was at the time the best campaign that I had had. So it was kind of strange, but it was good because it was a proof of concept for, if I go into books, can I make it sustainable? The answer
Sure.
is unequivocally yes. That market seems to be a lot more into the higher price tag.
Oh,
Right?
great,
Yeah.
great. Well, and, if you've got 40 different creators who have an interest in the book selling and, friends and family that are gonna wanna see them in print too, honestly, when I first read about that pitch, I thought, "Doggone it, Adriano, you're a genius. You're a genius." Because you get a whole bunch of people selling your book for you too.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. It sells itself. Right. I got
Oh,
all these authors going out there saying, "Hey, I'm in this," and they also gave them books at cost for them to pick up themselves. Right. So they were
mhm,
all invested in seeing this through and making sure that it hit print and all that. I did a Kickstarter exclusive hardcover that you could only get during the campaign, so that helped with a bit of FOMO in that. That if you want the nice hardcover, you have to get it during that window. So that definitely helped. But yeah, it did really well, and it was better than I had expected. I don't have the same expectations when it's just my work as a solo author, but I see kind of how the audience is different on that end than it is from the comics market. So in that
yeah,
way, it was a success, and we'll see how the second volume goes. That's my next campaign coming at the
sure.
end of October. So if you miss number 1, yeah,
And so for any of our listeners too, if you are interested in checking out a bunch of very good short stories from multi-genre, it is available right now on, Amazon Prime Reader, is that right? Or is it Kindle Unlimited, is
Kindle
that
Unlimited, yes. Yeah, so it's available there if you have Kindle Unlimited. Because of that, there's an exclusivity window. So we're stuck on Amazon for now. Once the second volume comes out, that is timed for the Kindle Unlimited window to close. So it'll be available widely on all of the other digital platforms. And you can get the physical copies through the Kickstarter campaign for volume 2. So you could catch up with number 1 as well. We'll have all of the usual bundles and all that stuff so you can get caught up. So that's the next campaign coming in at the end of October.
Hey everybody, this is Mark popping back in again here at the end of the episode. I think we're going to go ahead and leave off here in the middle of our conversation, and we will pick back up with a little bit further discussion of Big Smoke Pulp, and then the rest of the Pesto Comics catalog and things that Adriano has going on when we come back for part 2 of this interview next week. I look forward to seeing you all back here for that, and until then, keep reading those comics.